Hi everyone, I hope everyone are safe. So today this video is about coming up with a production mimic scenario. This video would definitely help many people to understand or give an idea about how the in real time the production scenarios would be implemented. But yes, as a caution note, I would also like to mention that it is focused on more on covering networking services of Azure than more on the security layer part. And there is no need of certain networking services to be implemented in this scenario, but for the sake of understanding all the respective services, we have tried implementing the services. So let's coming back to the discussion, how would this playlist would go is we would cover all the respective Azure networking services. This video is about giving an architecture overview and the task overview, how it goes from here. And then we would be actually talking about how do we configure virtual networks and subnets. And then we would also talk about how do we configure a virtual network gateway and how do we configure a point-to-site connection. And then we talk about we provisioning a load balancer and an application gateway in this virtual networks. Along with it, we would also there would be at least three virtual networks would be created, and we would be connecting all those using the VNet peering concept. We provision here few virtual machines, and along with it, we will be creating certain network security groups so that we would also filter the traffic from here. Then we would work on hosting websites in virtual machine. So as if you see, I'm implementing a load balancer and an application gateway. So in this scenario, when there is an actually load balancing option, it is load balancing the websites. So I would also host websites, and end of the day, I configure the load balancing and application routing rules and backend targets for the virtual machines which are being created. Or also I will configure private DNS zones so that I would instead of remembering and managing the virtual machines which are being created using their private IPs or IP addresses, I will configure the DNS name records so that it's easier in terms of managing and maintaining the web servers which are being configured. So let's actually give an architecture overview how it goes further from here. I'm opening the paint. So there is a system through which I'm working right now. Let's assume that this is my local machine. I'm naming it as my local machine. This is one, and there is a VNet, and let me name this VNet as VNet West US. Now I'll create a virtual network gateway, VNet gateway, and then after once I configure the VNet gateway, I will establish a point to site connection. So once I set up a point to site connection, let me name it as point to site connection. Configure a subnet here, and in this subnet, I will place management servers. So through which I will be managing the web servers which are being created where the websites would be running. And let me name this servers as management O1, and this subnet I'll name it as management subnet. So once I create this, I'll create another VNet here, and this VNet I will name it as VNet Central India, and I'll create a load balancer here. And now this and I'll create a subnet, and I'll name this subnet as web01, and this is named as this is a website 101, so I'll name this as web01 subnet, or let's mention that as web servers subnet, and I'll name this VM as web01 01, and similarly I will name this VM as web0102. So I'll name this as web01 and web0102 VM, and I'll actually create another VNet, and I'll maintain this in VNet West Europe. There I'll create an application gateway. Now I'll similarly create another subnet, and this subnet I'll have two VMs, and I'll name this subnet as web servers subnet, and I'll name this as web0201 VM and web0202 VM. Now, when a request comes from internet, so there are two types of requests do comes to application gateway. One would be about www.web01.com, and there would be another request would also go to application gateway, and that is www.web02.com. So when two URLs goes from internet, and it will be hitting the application gateway, and application gateway will balance the load, sending it to one backend pool of VMs, that is respective of website. If it is web02.com, it will be routing the request to web02 VMs in this subnet. Or if in case if it is a web01, then the request would be routed to this load balancer, and this load balancer will balance the load to this VMs. So as I mentioned in the starting of the topic, that there is no need to actually bring in load balancer here, but to actually showcase how does the load balancer services work, I tried inculcating this in this video, this concept in this video. But application gateway in fact acts as a load balancer, where it balances the traffic accordingly to the respective backend targets. And along with this, I will also configure a VNet peering to this and to this. So I'll configure a VNet peering, and I'll also configure VNet peering to this network. So from West US, you would be seeing we'll be peering to VNet Central India, and similarly from West US, we would be peering to VNet West Europe. So this is how it goes, and I believe that we have covered all these things: networking, subnet masking, and private DNS zones. Okay, so what is rest is been not been covered is we will be configuring private DNS zones. So you can expect private DNS zone to be configured in this VNet, and similarly it would be configured to this VNet, and it would be configured to this VNet, so that the management VM can easily manage the Web01 VMs and Web02 VMs. So let me again cross check. So we'll also uh, implement port forwarding techniques. We can also implement a port forwarding technique from a load balancer to one of the VM in this web servers. So yes, in real time, you would also see, as I mentioned about security point of view, what more things would be coming here is there would be route tables, there might be a chance of a traffic manager coming in picture, and there would be Bastion service would be coming in picture. There would be ASGs would be coming in picture, and we would also see a site-to-site connection. But we are not covering all those aspects here. We might also see the custom domains being registered. Go forward with the coming topics. This is how the flow would go. So I would be first configuring the virtual networks. As you see, I'll be configuring the virtual networks, and then I would configure the virtual network gateway for this one so that I can configure a point to site connection. And once this has been set up, I will actually configure a load balancer and application gateway in this respective VNets. And once that has been configured, I will actually configure VNet peering among this VNet. So if you see, I was able to perform VNet. I will be peering this VNet West US to Central India and VNet West US to VNet West Europe. And once I do that, you would also see that I will be provisioning this V management 01 and web 01 and web 02 VMs. So once I configure that VMs and networks into respective network security groups, I would also host websites in this two virtual machines. So I'll actually try choosing some GitHub public repository where there are any sample HTML websites. I would take that and host that websites, and once that was been done, I will actually configure the load balancer and the application gateway settings of routing rules and backend targets so that when a request comes, it can be routed to that respective machines. So the application gateway can actually route to the backend pool of this, or it would be routing back to the load balancer, which will in fact route the request to the respective VMs in this. And once those are been configured, I will also configure a private DNS zones in this virtual network, in this virtual network, in this virtual network, so that when a management server l- tries logging into this VMs, it would be able to, instead of going with an IP address, it will go with the domain names of the web application. So enough of talk. So let's deep jump into the implementation.